I think I probably started listening to Tim Ballard's stories in like 2018, 2019. And I remember hearing about this movie at that time. And I remember searching for it, and it said that the production had been completed, but there was no release date. And this movie has been held up for years and years and years. And
8 years.
I, huh?
8 years. They tried
I
to
thought it was
stop this
5.
movie.
I thought it was 5, but
Oh, it
it,
was it was 3 years to produce and then 5 years of bureaucratic nonsense. Yeah, the whole
uh,
process was 8 years, but the stalling was five. You're right.
yeah, it's wild. Um, it's interesting that Disney, of all organizations, chose to shelve this movie. This is supposed to be a pro-family business corporation, and it's what's interesting is because a lot of this stuff with Disney has just come out over the last few years, at least that people have been more aware of. But clearly, there is something that they didn't want out about this movie years ago. And so, to me, it just goes to show that they've been this pro pedo organization for a lot longer than any of us realized.
Yeah, I number one, I'm gonna keep it together. That is what I'm telling myself. But one of I think one of the most incredible things about Tim Ballard, having known him and worked in the same field for a much smaller period of time. I was on the human trafficking task force for 6 years. Only 4 of those years were really hot and heavy, and he did something like 30 with the agency, DHS, and then Operation Underground Railroad. Like, how this guy continues as a husband, as a father, as a Christian, just as a normal dude is beyond me. But one of the most admirable things about him is his career he was basically a human trafficking hunter with Homeland Security's HSI, Homeland Security Investigation. It's it's DHS's FBI. Super small agency. They're kind of like mystical. No one knows about them or what they do. One of the things they do, they have principal jurisdiction for domestic human trafficking, international human trafficking. So he decided he was only arresting adults in possession of child pornography, and they would have terabytes of this trash. And he was arresting adult after adult after adult after adult. And, there are just hundreds of thousands, millions of these people, these creeps. And he just wasn't satisfied with it because he could see the kids in the videos. And there's a thing, we called it on the task force, we called it Satan's Instagram. It's called ICAC, Internet Crimes Against Children. It is a database that has photos and videos of child pornography. There's no other way to describe it. And most of your bigger law enforcement agencies or your bigger police departments, they'll have ICAC detectives, they'll have ICAC analysts, and they all deal in this stuff. And it's very terrible. And he was just like, I can't do this. Like, I'm just arresting these adults, but the kid is there. Like, I can save the kid. And the big government machine's like, screw the kid. We're just charging. What are we going to do with the kid? Like, put him on welfare? We're just charging the adult. And he walked away from it all and started rescuing children instead. And it's been an incredible story. I haven't seen the movie. I wasn't going to see the movie. I have now been elucidated with the knowledge that my wife wants to see it, so I'm probably going to go and see this movie. But it's probably going to be tough for me because, one, I don't really do movie theaters for reasons. And yeah. Anyway, I don't want to get into the weeds, but I think you should see the movie. I think everyone should see the movie. People that have worked in it, we probably don't need to see it. I did not hear this particular story. There's a Tim Ballard story that just gets me every time. I can tell it if you want, or we can just drive on to something else. when they rescued this group of teenage women, and there was a young Asian woman who was like the child. I say woman, she was a child who was like the leader. Have you heard that story?
I don't know if I've heard that one. You can tell it if you want to, if you feel like
I'll tell it quick. I'll try and go fast. So one of the things that Tim would do is he would go undercover as a buyer, as an illicit sex purchaser, or someone who was purchasing children, boys, girls, whatever. So he did one operation. I don't know. I don't know the security classifications of his operation, so I won't say the city or any specifics because I honestly don't know. But anyway, they're doing this operation. His team is like former CIA, former Special Forces guys and gals, some of the greatest targeting analysts out there, who can step away from the keyboard and go and body slam you and put a gun in your face. Great people, American heroes.
Yeah.
So they go in, and Tim is like a pro. And if you meet him in real life, he is... you're not going to get upset about this. He's the epitome of what a man should be. He's kind and gentle. He's very friendly, but you can feel the presence of danger. You know that he is a dangerous man. You know that he can probably kill most of the people in the room, if not everyone. And you can kind of feel that, but he's very jovial, very kind, and he does travel with the security entourage. They are not that. We will, send you to meet your maker in a second. But he stays in character very well. Tim has seen it all. He's done it all. He's not surprised by anything, generally. Well, on this operation, he's going and he's supposed to get, say, 6 of the girls. There were supposed to be 6 girls there. They ended up being like 12 or 15. He says that I want them all. Well, the seller says you can't have them all because you haven't inspected them all. So he's like, well, we could do it now, get them out here. So they have the 6 girls, but then they bring out all of the girls. This one, there were no young men in this sale, but there's like 15 teenage girls and young girls in their undergarments, and Tim has to be the buyer. So he's going and inspecting them, and you have to do it right. Like you have to play the part of this dirtbag. Now, some of the girls started to fall apart, and if you fall apart in front of your trafficker, then you can get punished pretty severely if there's a customer there. So this young Asian girl steps out in front of the line of girls, and turns her back to Tim and to the person who owns them, and she's telling all of these girls, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if we're going to be separated. But she says that I know that we will be rescued at some point. She says, I've been praying for this. And she says, God has told me, like, somehow, some way we are going to be rescued. And the guy's like yelling at her. She starts praying out loud over these young girls. And Tim's like on the other side of this wall is like a team of the meanest guys out there that are just waiting for the transaction to be complete, and then all hell is going to break loose. But when this girl starts praying out loud over these other girls, Tim almost lost it. He was like, I almost bawled like a baby. Hearing him tell the story is a lot worse and more graphic. But they did the deal, and Tim broke at the moment that they, splash out, broke the door, and did all the stuff. But yeah, he's that guy. He's not doing it anymore. He's retired. But
I wasn't sure if he was still going on these operations, and I mean, what is his role at this point? Do you know? Because I don't think I know.
So he is still with Operation Underground Railroad, I think in an advisory capacity. One of the biggest reasons for that, and you'll notice on the website, you can hardly see any of the team members because they're kind of like Project Veritas. Everything they do is clandestine. Well, now Tim is famous. Just over the years, people know his face. People know the sound of his voice. He cannot go undercover as a as a
Yeah.
buyer. So I don't know what he does. I know where he lives, and it's beautiful out there. A lot of Mormons. Um, I don't know. Maybe he
Yeah.
fishes and hikes.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, the whole thing is an incredible story. I'm surprised I haven't heard that one yet. I mean, I've heard a lot of his stories, but it, I love that it is starting such an important conversation. And I think one of my biggest fears with watching this movie, because I know I'm going to go see it, is watching a movie like that and leaving with, like, I have to do something. Well, what can I do? And I think a lot of people are probably asking that question, like, how can I stop this? And of course, CNN is making fun of people and they're like, well, people think that if they buy a movie ticket that they're going to stop traffickers. And it's like, well, no, that's not what anybody thinks, but thank you for insulting my intelligence. It's, I don't know. I've looked at his website, the Operation Underground Railroad. I know people can host fundraisers. I know people can volunteer. I know people can donate. So, I mean, I don't know if you know of any other things that people can, like, us peasants, us civilians out here can do, or.
Oh yeah. The number one thing that people can do, and the movie will help, especially the research that people do after the movie. My own organization, we ran some studies, and what we found was in 2016, 17, or 18, this is the second largest crime in the world. They gross something 150, 180 billion dollars with a B. But internationally, there were 971 convictions. Now, the state that I live in, we convict more domestic violence, we convict more DUI, we convict more gun crimes than 971 in a given year as an individual state. But one of the largest crimes in the world, all of the world, they convicted 971 people. The United States that year convicted 9 people of human trafficking.
Wow.
So the reason that it goes on is because people don't know what it looks like. People think of Taken. Taken is a very entertaining movie. It is very unrealistic for what trafficking looks like. You can watch Trafficked, very good. It's on Amazon Prime. You can watch is it 7 or 8 days?
Which one?
7 days or 8 days. It's a movie by Yakubuyans with his sister was trafficked for, I think it's called 7 days. His sister was trafficked for 7 years. Amazingly, she was rescued. And he distills that story and that experience in a high school Texas girls experience in 7 days, who was also rescued. I'm assuming that this movie as well, haven't seen it, but Sound of Freedom, probably another one. And it'll just kind of illuminate what it actually looks like. So we found people weren't getting convicted because juries couldn't convict because they couldn't understand the scope of the crime. There's a law called TVPA, Tango Victor Papa Alpha, the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, which amazingly was signed into law. It was drafted in 2003, signed into law, and finalized in 2012. So hear this. In the United States, while we were alive, it was not federally illegal. It was not a felony to traffic a human being. That became illegal in 2012, which is nuts. Which is, yeah, absolutely insane.
Right.
But anyway, people could look at the Trafficking Victims Protection Act. There are websites that help better, but you need to know the scope of the crime. There needs to be an act, a means, and an act, a means, and purpose. And the act has to involve force, fraud, or coercion. That's kind of the pyramid. And I'm like blasting through human trafficking training. But if you understand acts, means, purpose, if you understand force, fraud, and coercion and what they look like, then you can actually see, oh, maybe that's what this was.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
That's what people can do when you send a tip to the tip line, to any type of tip line, local PD, state agency, FBI. If it's one little blip, it goes into the database. But when they start to see 5, 9, 20 blips of a similar incident in a similar geography, that's what creates intelligence. Intelligence is never one person saw this, that, and the other thing. It's the compilation of information that creates what's called an intelligence product. And that's how Tim has done what he's been able to do. Is they looked at all this information and they said, we're going to hyper focus and look for this tight shot group of information. And when we see this, we are going to, fall on it. Like, yeah, we're just going to descend on it with wrath and fury. But yeah, so just kind of knowing what it looks like. Don't try to intervene. Call law enforcement. When you call law enforcement, you have to use the words you suspect human trafficking, sex or labor trafficking, so you get the right law enforcement dispatch, because police officers don't know. And I say that, I was one. I've also trained hundreds, if not thousands, of law enforcement officers with seasoned careers, and they had no idea. I've trained judges, state and federal agents. They just don't know. They're kind of in the same boat that you're in. They're just like, I don't know anything about this crime. Yeah.
Well, and and so clearly being educated is a good thing. And I know that, there's probably a lot of websites, but I know Operation Underground Railroad, like they have a little thing on their website that says get educated, and you can figure out what this looks like. And I think, and it didn't occur to me until someone commented on a video that I made about Sound of Freedom, just talking about the different experiences. Someone said, this is basically bringing attention to like the slavery of Black people or brown-skinned people or something to that effect. And I think people get this idea that they see this happening in places like Haiti or, South Africa or, wherever else that he's going, in Colombia and all these places. And it's like, this is something, if you listen to Jaco Bouyan, he says this is happening in every single zip code in the US. And it's not in the form always of these massive trafficking rings. There are parents that are trafficking their own kids. This happens a lot in the foster system. This happens a lot in impoverished communities. I mean, if there's a vulnerability, there's a chance that a child is being trafficked. And I worry. I think the biggest thing that is probably, an obstacle for a lot of people is the fact that we're so hyper-focused on what we're doing all the time, that it could be happening right in front of us and we're not going to see it. Like, I when I'm out in public, I mean, I'm not paying attention to anybody around me. And we're all looking at our phones. We're all just like busy with 9,000 other things. And so I think that, that education part of it is going to help us be aware of what to look for when we're out in public. And clearly, we don't want to swoop in and, intervene, like you said, but it's so much more prevalent and common than anybody, any of us realize. It's happening in our own backyards. And I think that's going to be a huge thing, is when we start recognizing what those signs look like.
Yeah. Jaco is a great resource for the reality of these things. There are towns in Oklahoma where the number one crime is familial trafficking, which is freaking nuts. But yeah,
no, it is. So I will probably go see it this weekend. But I mean, I just have to say, with the reaction from the left, I can't think of any good reason to discredit this movie at all. It is not, to me, it's not a movie about entertainment. It's not about, these gotcha moments. I wouldn't even call it a thriller, because that's not the intent of this movie. It, especially if you know anything about Tim Ballard, if you know anything about Jim Caviezel, that as much authenticity and, sincerity and realism went into this movie as humanly possible, because this, they want people to understand, the reality of this situation. So, yeah.
Are you familiar with the particular story that the movie's based off of?
I think so. Is it the one where he went in to find that? Well, I mean, in real life, about the little boy that he was trying to find.
Yeah. So I don't know how the movie ends. I know how the story ends in real life. And I'm kind of interested because I haven't seen a spoiler yet. I'm kind of interested how they ended the movie.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, if it's the story that I'm thinking of, then yes, I'm familiar with it. So that's why I feel like I can talk about this movie and offer a perspective on it, just because I know so much of what Tim has talked about. And I feel like I know what's going to be in this movie. So it makes me nervous to watch it, but very important.
It makes me nervous too. Yeah.
You know.
I've shared a few times my exit from that work was caused by the loss of a 23-year-old and 2-year-old mother-daughter victim pair that were killed, and Tim's experience a lot worse. But
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious. What happens in the end of the movie. Just
Well, we'll have to talk about it more after we've both seen it. But
hey, if you enjoyed that clip from the Joe Mobley Show, of which I join every Thursday evening to talk about the week's biggest headlines and the stories most likely to make your head explode, there's a few things I need you to do. First, like this video, leave your thoughts in the comments below, and share it with others. Also, be sure you are subscribed to my channel. You can click the link in the description box to catch the week's latest full episode, and tune in every Thursday evening at 7:30 p.m. Central Time, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time, where we stream on all major platforms on both of our accounts, including YouTube, Getter, Twitter, and Facebook. But most importantly, Rumble, because we do need to support platforms that support free speech. Also, be sure to catch my daily videos where I talk about the topics that I think matter to everyday people, especially those of us trying to raise kids in the insanity known as today's society. I do appreciate your support on my channel, and I will see you in the next video.